Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Jen Foley. I'm District 65, running for State House Representative, and just wanted to have this conversation with two of my fellow Emerge Tennessee sisters today. We met during the Emerge Boot Camp that we all went through, which is a training program for female candidates. And I really wanted to take this opportunity to highlight some of the phenomenal women who are running for office all across the state, and also share with my constituents and hopefully with Dominique and Amber's constituents some of the issues that our districts are facing. Because even though we all live in the great state of Tennessee, the way issues impact our lives on the ground are vastly different. So I'll just take this minute to introduce myself to Dominique and Amber's constituents. Like I said, my name is Jen Foley. I live in Williamson County, which is south of Nashville. I'm running for State House Representative District 65. I have a PhD in anthropology from Vanderbilt. I'm a mom of 3, and I volunteer for the Tennessee Achieves program, helping students who receive the Tennessee Promise Scholarship as a mentor, and I also volunteer for the Williamson County Democratic Party. Dominique, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Dominique Primer, candidate for Tennessee House District 84 here in Shelby County, covering parts of Memphis. I am a graduate of Hampton University in Virginia. I hold degrees in political science, a master's in public administration, and also a master's in international relations with a focus on security studies around Middle Eastern policy. I am the owner of a swim team here locally, and the Swim Academy Memphis Stingrays and the Swim Academy Memphis.
And how about you, Amber?
Hello, my name is Amber Riddle. I am running for State Senate District 4. That covers Sullivan County, Johnson County, and Carter County out here in the very tip of Tennessee. I am a mom of 6. I graduated from East Tennessee State University with a bachelor's in psychology and sociology. And I also have a social work degree as well. I have been dabbling in different things, so I try to go where I can, where I'm needed. I have helped with domestic abuse victims, Head Start Policy Council in the past. Right now, I have been talking with people in the area about trying to start up a housing task force that can maybe help lower rent cost and save a lot of our government housing buildings from gentrification. So that's a huge deal for me, and just trying to do a lot of things at once, really.
Well, I'm sure we all know how to multitask. That's kind of our go-to mode, I think. Dominique, could you tell us a little bit more about your district, where it is, and what the makeup and geography is like, and what some of the issues are that your district is facing?
So District 84 is a part of Southeast Memphis. It starts at the Memphis airport and runs southeast along the outer corridor right before Mississippi, the state line, and then going towards what we would consider Hacks Cross and entering into Germantown and Carterville. The district is mostly Black. It is about 60,000 people who reside in District 84. Of the 60,000 people, less than half are registered to vote, and only about a 10th actually participate in our elections. It is a district that feels like it has been neglected, and unsupported by current representation, we feel that it is time for us to reprioritize the things that are going on in our communities. And so looking at things that are important in the community, like affordable and accessible healthcare, equality, I'm sorry, not equality, but quality education leads to quality jobs, and then safer communities, and looking at what criminal justice reform looks like. What does it mean to have a working relationship with police here locally, looking at community policing, looking at blight and poverty, and how all these things that District 84 is experiencing are interrelated, right? So like when you don't have access to good healthcare, then you probably also aren't able to work in some capacity, which could also lead to people feeling like communities are not safer. And so the things that we're seeing are remnants of poverty, which is a problem of, it's a system that we have to really think about how we're going to dismantle and what it looks like for people in District 84 to be fully represented across the state.
That's really important. And Amber, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your district?
So Dominique went into a little bit more than what I had planned for just telling about the district. Anyway, so my district is really rural. It covers Sullivan County, Johnson County, and a small part of Carter County. My district is home to the most beautiful places because we are Appalachia. We have lakes, beautiful trails to hike, rolling mountains, state parks, waterfalls, caverns, and we also are home to the Bristol Motor Speedway. So anything outdoors, like you can do it here, we have it.
It's okay.
Yeah. So that's the district here.
Well, that's good. My district 65 is a mix of rural, a mix of rural and suburban and small cities. So it covers part of Franklin, part of Spring Hill, part of Thompson Station, and part of Fairview. All of Fairview and Leapers Fork. So we have a lot of small family farms. We also have, the working class areas of Fairview and Spring Hill, and then we also have the more affluent areas of Franklin and Thompson Station. So it's a mixture of economic and geographical areas, but it's also 90% white, and I think about maybe the whole population is about 50,000, and then about 70% usually turn out for voting. So we're pretty active in voting, but it's traditionally been pretty, conservative. But especially in Spring Hill, we're facing a lot of growth, a lot of people moving in from different parts of the country and learning about the history here. So we're starting to grapple with some of the remnants of the Confederate history that is represented in Williamson County, especially in the county seal and in our downtown Franklin. So there's a lot of discussion going on, a lot of changes happening, and a lot of sort of aversion to change too, which is understandable. But yeah, so Dominique, why did you decide to run for office?
So I am running for office because I grew up in District 84, and I had the opportunity to see 84 at its apex and its simultaneous decline. And so in having someone represent you for 26 years, you realize that our voices are not being heard, that this feeling of being unsupported and unheard is actually true. That we don't have adequate representation, that there's no accountability, there's no transparency. We don't know what's happening with our representation on the state level. Often, our representatives are in the news, but not necessarily for, making noise on the Hill for positive things. And so I felt that it was time for me to, one, challenge the current status quo here. We are a Democratic city. A lot of our Democrats have been comfortable, and that we needed to have representation that was going to listen to us. That I believe that accountability and transparency is necessary, that the most powerful thing that we have in the democracy is our ability to vote, and that we need to utilize our voices because that is where our power is in that vote. And so understanding the interconnectedness of how I want to see change here in my community, but also see change across the state of Tennessee is why I got involved.
I think that's really great. And I think all of us feel that way. But Amber, how about you? Why did you decide to step up and run?
I decided to run for state senate because I feel like I'm a person that is not being represented among others here. So I've been a server for years, and we still are only getting paid $2.13 an hour. Usually our paychecks are zero. So we live off of our tips, you know. Nobody has ever came forward and said, like, hey, maybe we should raise the minimum wage for you guys. Or really, nobody has ever said, hey, let's raise the minimum wage for anybody that makes not a living wage at all here. Yeah. Many people have part-time jobs. That's the majority of the jobs that are around here because they don't want to have to offer health insurance. We have actually in my whole district, I think that it's 23 or 26% Alice homes, which is working poor. Okay. That's a lot of people. We have a lot of farmers out here that I feel like are extremely underrepresented, and they're forgotten. They're forgotten about among, you know, others as well. I have many reasons to run for office, but I'm tired of looking around at all the marginalized people day to day, and nobody standing up for them. This is time for change because the people of Tennessee need somebody that's going to work for everyone, not just middle class or upper middle class or rich people. Like, we need someone that's going to be able to get in there and be like, hey, I've experienced this. I know what this is like. We need to talk about these things that are not being put on the table.
I agree 100%. And it's really interesting because in Williamson County, I don't think a lot of people think about how people in different areas of the state are living. We're very fortunate, very privileged, and very comfortable here, frankly. And I think a lot of the representation we have in the state legislature reflects that. It doesn't reflect what's happening for people throughout the rest of the state, and that's important. It's part of the reason I'm running too. I've just grown increasingly frustrated with the General Assembly over the years, and especially this year when they were trying to push the vouchers program and the permitless carry bill, while, you know, giving tax breaks to special interests and big businesses. You know, those special interest bills were not popular at all with the people, and our elected officials just did not want to listen to us. So I think, like you, that our government should be working for the people, not for those special interests. And I just, you know, because I've volunteered with the Williamson County Democratic Party, they did ask me to run. And at first I was like, that's crazy. I have 3 kids. I have no time. How would I ever do this? But I realized that, like both of you, that the government does need our voice. Our voice is important. We may not have a lot of wealth or political power, but we represent, you know, the majority of people, honestly. And especially as women and mothers, we will, you know, we need voices who are going to look out for those vulnerable segments of our population. So, and then ultimately I just, you know, realized I had to set an example for my kids. We're all trying to teach our kids to be great people, be kind and caring. And in my case, two of the biggest values I'm trying to teach them are to stand up for what you believe in and speak up for other people. Use your voice to help other people. And I realized if I didn't step up and run, then how could I really teach them that? How could I needed to set an example for how to actually live those words instead of just trying to teach them. So that's where I'm coming from. Yeah, I think, Dominique, you've already kind of touched on some of the more important issues facing your district, but are there specific legislative policies that you would want to address, or legislative issues that you would want to address once you're elected?
I think one of the major things that we have to address is fully funding education. You spoke about the voucher bill earlier, and the voucher bill targeted Shelby County schools, which is one of the largest school districts in the state, and it resides in Memphis. And so when we're looking at education for our students, we really have to look at what it looks like for us to serve the whole child. What does it mean for us to deal with all the issues that our students are facing around their social and emotional learning? How do we implement restorative justice practices? How do we make sure that we are providing enough funding so that we can provide other options for students who need social workers, we need more guidance counselors in the schools? How do we build that support around not only just the education, but making sure that our students have the ability to perform at their whole complete selves, and then to help make sure that our teachers are able to teach. So we can't expect for students to perform at a high level when they don't have the resources that they need to be successful. The state continues to give as little as possible in education and then expect for our students to perform at the maximum level. And so that disconnect between what it really looks like to have good public education manifests across the state, right? And so we look at education and we see that not only are students in Shelby County suffering, but a lot of the school districts, whether that is a charter school or whether that is some of our public schools who have been taken over by the state with the achievement school districts, what we see is that that's not just unique to Memphis, but that's happening in Davidson County. That's also happening in Knox and Sullivan, and that education is underfunded. And if we want for our Tennessee students to be competitive going forward, that we have to start investing in their education early. So we have to look at what universal pre-K looks like. How do we make that option available for all kids? How do we even the playing field so that education for our kids who are going to public school is just as good as our kids who are going to private school, so that we're not having to look at voucher bills to pull students out of public school and send them to private school. Just because you pull them doesn't mean that they're going to have or start to perform at the same level or at a higher level if they still don't have the resources that they need. So I think education absolutely has to be a priority, as well as looking at accessible and affordable healthcare. But I'll come back to that.
What about you, Amber?
Yeah, you all have both touched base on several things that are issues within my district as well. So in my district, we have, so we're up near Southwest Virginia. All right, we're borderline with them. And so in Southwest Virginia, there was a private healthcare monopoly that came in and took over. Well, then they took over Northeast Tennessee as well. It's Ballad Health. Okay. I fear for Ballad, I fear that it's going to hurt even more of our rural hospitals that we do have with funding. So in Kingsport, where I live in Sullivan County, we had two hospitals there. One was bigger than the other. So we have Holston Valley and Indian Path. Holston Valley was our trauma level 1 hospital. Once Ballad took over, they leveled it. Okay. They have brought it from a trauma level 1 to a trauma level 3 and took out our whole birth center. That included a NICU. The NICU was the only NICU in the area, even for Southwest Virginia people too. So when people in Southwest Virginia needed care for their babies, they were taken there because it was the closest place. And that's also where they would get care too, or choose to have their babies. which I know that's Virginia, but that's the same thing for Tennessee too. So Indian Path still is there, and they still do have a birthing floor, but they've limited it to only 2 doctor practices to deliver babies there. There's no NICU, and it's a good hospital. Don't get me wrong. I had one of my kids there, and they're more geared towards more natural birthing. Okay, and I liked that. That's what I did. When I had, let's see here, when I had Ellie in 2018, I chose to have her at Indian Path. She didn't have any issues, so that was good. And then when I had Emma in 2019, because they're 13 months apart, even within that year, there was a huge change. I was no longer allowed at my OBGYN, like I had been seeing for 10 years or longer. I was no longer allowed to choose Holston Valley or Indian Path to give birth at. I had to then drive 35 minutes away to a hospital in Bristol, which is another city over in Sullivan County as well, to deliver my baby. And I almost didn't make it. So I almost delivered in the car because I couldn't make it there in time. And that goes on to talk about too, like, when people have heart attacks here, they no longer have a hospital they can be rushed to. They have to be flown or by ambulance to the nearest trauma level 1 center, which is in Johnson City, which from there is probably a 25 to 30 minute drive in itself. And that's life or death. That can be life or death for anyone. Now, I had the baby, she had an accident and hit her head. And so she ended up having a skull fracture. She had a seizure, and I took her to Holston Valley because it was 5 minutes from where I was at. Mm-hmm. They wouldn't do anything for her there. They put us on an ambulance and took us 2 hours away to Knoxville before they did anything. And those 2 hours were so scary. Yeah. Anything could have happened to her, and I can't even think about it. But those are just some of the issues. Johnson County, which is the very tip, they're even more rural than us. And they have one center there, but they don't do birthing and they don't do acute care. So they're flown to Johnson City Medical Center, which is even further away for them. It's almost an hour. And what I have an issue with too is they don't cover the flight costs. They put the flight cost on the patient.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, you have travel costs left on the patient already on top of other medical bills that they're going to acquire from having issues or health issues and stuff. So, that's a huge deal right now. They've taken over almost everything. I have a paper that I found at my doctor's office because somehow I think were able to escape the takeover. So they're still their own little entity. But it was talking about the price from HMG, which is Holston Medical Group. Their price of MRIs, per se, is $1,000 or almost $2,000. And then Ballad Health's MRI price is $7,000. So they are, hurting the people here so much.
Yeah.
It's not good. Which then, of course, we have health insurance issues here. Like I said before, we have many people who only have part-time jobs because their employers don't want to pay or have to offer insurance. Mm-hmm. And the people with full-time jobs don't make enough to buy insurance to afford it. And then, of course, they don't qualify for normal Medicaid that we have right now, whether they just don't have kids or they make just a little bit too much to qualify for it, but not enough to buy other insurance. And so they fall in this middle category. And so I work with those people. I work with these people. They're your servers, they're your retail workers, they're your fast food workers, they're your part-time, some of your teachers even, okay? And teachers assistants, staff, school staff, and they come to work sick because they can't afford to miss a day at work. They come to work with abscessed teeth and work through the pain, and you can hear them crying in the bathroom, or you know, they've even had people contemplate or even take antibiotics that are for animals because they can't go to the doctor to get antibiotics to help them with sinus infections or abscessed teeth is a huge issue because there's absolutely no dental insurance that's affordable here.
Yeah.
So
And so what kind of solutions have been discussed, or, what is Ballard Health is just trying to cut costs and save money? Is that why they've reduced the care services provided and that sort of thing? And
yeah, so they've reduced all this, and I'm not even sure. I've been trying to find out what's happened to. They let go a whole birthing floor. That's your nurses, your hospital staff.
Yeah.
The doctors were able to go other places, of course, but your nurses, they're not absorbed by the other hospitals because there were already birthing floors there or other positions filled. So I'm not really sure how many people have lost their jobs because of this, but what I have been told is that they laid off a bunch of people and then rehired on people with lower cost, like lower hourly pay or salary than the ones that were there to begin with. So it's all about money, of course. And some of the things that we could look at is, we have antitrust laws on a national level that breaks up monopolies, or they're supposed to break up monopolies anyway. And we need those here on a state level that help with breaking up private healthcare monopolies like this, and, other monopolies as well that could take over. And then, of course, Medicaid expansion, which would then cover those people that I talk about who are your retail workers, your part-time workers, your servers, your kitchen staff, it would give them an opportunity to have health insurance so they have a longer lifespan. They, are able to take care of, any high blood pressure or diabetes, or, just be overall healthy in general. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty sure, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the Medicaid expansion pack comes with a dental plan too.
Yeah.
So,
I'm not sure, but I think the state could offer that if they wanted to.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like both of you, I think healthcare costs and funding public education are two of the biggest factors that my district faces too, although for different reasons. Williamson County is relatively affluent, and people have most people I think have private insurance through their employers. But what people don't realize too is that if we expanded Medicaid throughout the state, our individual costs would probably go down too, because it makes the whole risk pool healthier. And so private insurance premiums would go down, and we'd be paying less, because right now, even if you have private insurance, a lot of plans just have unbelievably expensive premiums and high cost deductibles. You have to cover all out of pocket expenses until like about, $5,000 or $10,000, depending on your plans. And so, and in addition to prescription costs, it's just getting to be out of control for many people. And even if you do have insurance, you don't end up going to the doctor because you have to weigh those costs, those out of pocket costs. So, but yeah, expanding Medicaid would be something that I would focus on as well. And then, like you said, Dominique, our public schools are not fully funded, even though I think, the governor said, the BEP, which is the basic education program, is fully funded. Well, it was created, like over 10 years ago. And so think of what our educational experience, how it's changed in 10 years with the with technology and the influx of people into the state. And so it's woefully out of date. And yes, you're right, all of the counties throughout the state are underfunded as far as public education is concerned. And here too, in Williamson County, one of the biggest concerns we have is, first of all, growth. And we keep having to build new schools, but there's not enough funding for that. And, the local governments have to pick up the tab or increase taxes. So there's a lot of debate over public education. And right now, the main thing a lot of families are worrying about is whether or not schools will even open in the fall. And it's a huge crisis, a pending crisis that, I don't feel like our government has a real plan for. Our Williamson County school system has developed 3 different contingency plans based on 3 different scenarios of how the virus will be spreading. But I think they've gotten very little guidance from the State Department of Education. And, in order to have children in close contact with teachers who are vulnerable too, I think we all need to be working together to be slowing the spread of the virus. People are very reluctant and resistant to wearing masks, but that's one of the main ways that we can stop the spread of this virus. Our county mayor just issued a mask mandate yesterday, thankfully, but a lot of people are resisting that. So it's very frustrating, and it's an impending economic crisis too, because if parents can't go to work because their children are at home, what's going to happen to the economy? So there's a lot of uncertainty right now, and I think if we had a proactive and leadership that was proactive and also thought about how all of these different systems are interconnected, our health, our education, and our economy, instead of just focusing on the economy, which is what, frankly, the Republicans have only tended to do, right? They're so concerned about bringing businesses to our state, but they're not concerned about making sure that those businesses have healthy and educated employees. So I think, we need to be in there fighting for all of those different areas of life to make everything better for Tennesseans. Did you have something you wanted to add, Amber?
Yeah. So, public schooling was, part of the issue here too, but I fear that our teachers are already underpaid as it is. And our public funding is man, okay, it's bad. So what I worry about, Johnson County has already put out that they're going to go back to traditional schooling in the fall unless something happens. So they're starting back August 4th, like a traditional school.
Are you guys sorry to interrupt you. Are you guys seeing the spread of the virus spiking in your area?
It's starting to rise here. So I feel like by the time that school does start, we're going to have, right now in Sullivan County, I know we only have 30 active cases, but it rises every day. There's more and more every single day in this area and stuff. So I feel like, how Middle and West Tennessee had their hit first. I feel like it's now moving over and finally hitting us over here because nobody is taking this serious here. There's some of us like me and of course other people like me that wear masks everywhere, but it's not going to help when the collective doesn't do it together. And the fact that Johnson County is not going to take any, I'm not sure if they're going to do masks or not for the kids. But I worry because teachers are already put under enough stress as it is, just teaching a normal classroom. They're now going to have to be a nurse and they're going to have to be a custodian. They're going to have to come and clean up and make sure that everything's disinfected and come behind each child. And then they're going to have to be a teacher as well. And that's a whole nother ball game of stress on top of what they already have normally without COVID. And they better be getting paid they should get paid mega bucks for this. But, at Sullivan County, they're giving them an option to learn online, which I think is really good. But they're also allowing, for a modified traditional classroom, I think, is what they're going to work towards. And I know that's there to help the parents that do work, because there's so many parents, that both parents or they're single parents, that work out of the home, and they depend on that school, the school, to help them with their kids while they're there. And I think that's important. But I like the fact that Sullivan County is also thinking about the parents that, of children who have autoimmune diseases or asthma, or, and they're giving them another option. And I like that. They finally replied to my emails after weeks of me emailing them, asking them what they're going to do. But,
and do most people in your area have internet access to do remote and online learning though?
No, there's not. And that's another issue. Johnson County, when I go out to Johnson County, I don't even have cell service. Yeah. When I had like Verizon, I didn't have cell service. I have AT&T now, and I don't have cell service either. So there's hardly any internet access out there.
Yeah.
And we would experience the same thing regarding internet access, and even who has access to technology. There's a huge tech divide here, or digital divide. Memphis has one of the highest poverty rates. To be considered an urban metropolitan area, it has one of the highest poverty rates. And so we have quite a few students who do not have any technology in their homes. And so shifting into a virtual learning option is not feasible. Although Shelby County Schools has said that they are going to try and make our classrooms one-to-one so that every child will receive some type of technology, whether that's a laptop or an iPad or something. The problem is, how do you get it here before school starts? How do we make sure that, in providing this tech for the kids, that we're not also transmitting the virus by having them come in contact? We're just putting people at risk. The other problem is that our infrastructure, right? Like our actual technology infrastructure is not built for there to be everybody at home on the internet at the same time. And so there has not been an investment in infrastructure in the state of Tennessee for a very long time. And so what does it look like for our students to have 21st century education, but not have 21st century infrastructure already ready? Which I think is why it's so important for us to have women elected to the legislature, because we often have the burden of trying to figure out what are kids going to do for school, how they're going to get their homework done, who has to choose whether they're going to work or not work. If I have to give my laptop up so that my child can be in class, do I have the ability to modify? We just don't have homes in some of our communities that have multiple laptops available. So how do you have a parent work from home and also have a child in school doing a virtual option? So there's just a lot of things that we have to think about that never came across the minds of our elected officials, right? So not only do we not think about education as a priority, but we're not even thinking about what it means when the Tennessee Department of Education says that we have to have 180 days of school no matter what.
Right.
And how that, how we're actually going to be able to do that, to require that of our educators, of our school systems, and to not be prepared to help them solve the problems that they had before we had the virus come along, but to now also add the virus on top of their previous issues is just completely unfair. And we can't continue to have that kind of representation across the state.
Yeah, I agree. And for families who can't have a parent stay at home to help their children with remote learning, who's going to be able to check in on kids who might have to be left home alone? I mean, that's going to be a real scenario and a real hard decision for a lot of kids. A lot of families, and it's not. I don't see any investment in social workers or guidance counselors or any mental health counselors who would be able to safely do checks on kids and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Or even our students who are learning English as a second language, or our kids who have IEPs, or our kids who need speech pathology. There are so many other needs that go into just students being in the classroom when they have these additional support services to help make their education equitable. we haven't thought about how we're going to provide those things to students in a virtual setting either. Right. A lot of that takes place one-on-one. And so how do you fix that, right? So how do we make it inclusive for our students who are learning English as a second language? We can't ask their parents, to make sure that their students are understanding, because there's going to be some gaps in the learning, and we have to be prepared to fill in those gaps and understand that it's going to take a long time for students to come back up from the learning loss that we assume that they had over the summer in this past spring, but to really be prepared to provide all kinds of resources so that students have exactly what they need if they are not in the classroom.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, gosh. So I think we've kind of touched on this. We all have we definitely have a unique perspective compared to who's in office right now representing our districts. But Dominique, what else do you think about your abilities? What do you think makes you a unique perspective for the House of Representatives?
I think my uniqueness is that I'm young. I have experienced so many of the issues that I'm advocating for. While I did come from privilege in regard of having, both parents and they have these great jobs and things like that, when I turned 26, I was no longer on my parents' health insurance. And so as a graduate student, health insurance was like, I needed it. I literally had a life-threatening medical thing happen while I was in graduate school, and I did not have insurance. And so if I had not had a relationship with my doctor who could tell me how to work the system to get the care that I needed, I could have lost my life. And so, it's looking at issues from how they impact me, but how do they collectively impact other people? I voted on issues, for President Obama because he was talking about extending healthcare, right? So as a college student, an undergrad, 21, going to graduate, like, oh God, you graduate, you're not going to have insurance. I'm not ready to go to work. I really don't know if this is what I want to do. And then, here's this guy talking about, I'm going to expand health insurance so you can stay on your parents' insurance until you're 26. Like, that's a real thing to be able to have that kind of policy, sweeping legislation come in and afford not just me, but so many millions of people in America the opportunity to continue to have coverage was super important. It is understanding the quality of education. I am a product of public education. I would not have made it where I made it to if I did not go to the schools I went to. I am a huge proponent of public education. I am the daughter of an educator. And so I understand the importance of that. I understand all the things that children are experiencing in the classroom because I've seen it firsthand by just being in the classroom with my mom over the past years. I know how important it is for pre-K because she taught pre-K. Mm-hmm. I know what it looks like for students to be able to come out of pre-K and able to read, and how much confidence that gives them and how much they have the ability to learn and to be passionate about education. For parents to become invested in their child's success so early, I see the benefits of that when you have teachers who have the ability to teach and they have the supports that they need so that they can provide quality education to their students. I've been fortunate enough to be in what some people would say is one of the safer communities in Tennessee, to know what it looks like to feel safe, to make mistakes like leaving your iPad or your phone on the front seat of your car and knowing that it's going to be okay. Nobody's going to break into it, to have good relationships with people who live in the neighborhoods and with the police and with the fire department and all those safety services, to advocate for the things that I care about. And I think that I'm only in that place because I've had so much exposure in such a little bit of time, and that I keep listening to what is important to the community, because I can have an idea of what I think is important, but it's because I participate in the things that are happening in the community. It's because I have that swim team that I'm able to understand what the kids are experiencing in school because they share the stories of what they're experiencing with me. It's because I volunteer and I'm a troop leader with Girl Scouts that I understand what parents are dealing with when they're trying to figure out what activities their kids are going to be a part of, whether or not, dad can bring them to Girl Scouts. Is that important? Our dad's able to participate in Girl Scouts. You know, it's all those things where I'm connected to the community that keeps me grounded as a person, but also keeps me real in what's happening here locally, that I think makes a difference. I am not disconnected from the real issues. I'm not sitting in an ivory tower thinking that, you know, everything's going to be fine. I have been impacted by a lot of these things personally, and I see it continuing to happen. And so I think that's what I have the ability to bring.
That's great. What about you, Amber?
Yeah, I feel like because I'm young, I have a little bit different perspective. I'm from, you know, the millennial generation, of course. I also have a different, perspective too, because I'm a first generation college student. I'm the first person in my family to go to college. I know how hard of a struggle that was, because I had no idea what to do. My family didn't know what to do. They had no idea how to help me fill out the paperwork or anything like that. So it really wasn't ever a thing in my house. You know, it was like, well, if you go to college, it's fine. If you don't, that's fine. You know, it wasn't ever really pushed. And when I graduated high school, shortly after, I got pregnant and I had my first baby. So I was a very young mom, and I had some complications, and I lost my house and it was apartment actually, but I lost my apartment and had to end up moving into government housing because it was just me, and I had nobody else. And I lived in government housing for 3 years, but while I lived there, I knew that I couldn't live like that forever. There's issues within itself that, I'm really just not going to get into it, but I just could not live there forever, and not try to do something to show that, you know, my daughter something else, a different life. So, I started college then, and I really used that to my advantage living there, because I was able to get my associate's degree, and I was able to save up and get student loans and stuff and buy my first house, and pay that off so I could finish college at the university and not have to struggle so hard. By that time, I'd had 2 kids. So, and I didn't have to struggle as hard, but I know what it's like to be extremely poor. And I know what it's like to be like way below the poverty line, and to wonder so, you know, to have $75 and only have food in the house for my kids and just go hungry, you know?
It's really important that our elected officials understand what that struggle is like, and very few of them do. Very few of them do.
No, I don't think that they do. So, you know, I was able to get past that and do better for myself, even, you know, serving tables and stuff like that. But I was able to finally get my education and my degree, and I was, you know, 28 when I finally got it, but I worked very hard to get there. But, and of course, we no longer have to worry about food. So that's a huge deal.
I think you bring an interesting perspective, because so many people think that, you know, America is a place where if you pull yourself up by the bootstraps, if you do it, you know, if you work hard, you can do it. And that so many people say that from a place of privilege, and they don't understand the structural problems that keep people from achieving, you know, the same level of affluence or the same dreams. And I think your perspective is one of that. Yes, I did do it. It was really excuse my language, effing hard. And it's, you know, by the grace of God, you were able to do it, and your own inner strength too, and help from the government. But it shouldn't have to be that hard, right? It shouldn't have to be that way. Just because it is doesn't make it right. So yeah, I think you're incredibly strong, and I'm really grateful that you've stepped up to run for office, and you as well, Dominique. I think your perspective is amazing as well, and you do so much for your community. It's amazing. I'm so in awe in both of you. So yeah.
Well, thank you. And Amber, I commend you for sharing so much of yourself with us. I think that perspective is needed because it's not the only one, right? Like, there's so many people who have similar stories to yours, and they are underrepresented because we don't think that they exist. We like to pretend that everything is great, and if we don't talk about it, if we can't put a face to it, if it hasn't been our own personal experience, then it's not real. But you are very real. Your story is very real. The things that you have experienced are very real, and that we need someone to advocate for those who have had those experiences. That voice has to be heard, and that's the only way we're going to be able to make any change.
It's true. That's true. And I come from a place of, relative privilege. I mean, we're a single income family. So we're doing okay, but we're not getting ahead. And I think, like many women who have had that decision that they had to make, once you start having children, daycare and childcare is just so incredibly expensive. And do you end up working to cover the cost of daycare, or do you and drive yourself crazy and try to juggle everything, or do you step back? And I realized that being able to even make that choice is a place of privilege too, but it's still not right. Women shouldn't have to take a back seat to their careers in order to have a family. And so that's one of the perspectives that I bring too. I understand how working families have to find ways to manage childcare, and even once they're in school, handle aftercare and summer care and all of the different issues that come up with just trying to not only get by but get ahead. I mean, the cost of college is so expensive. Like I said, we're doing okay, but we're not getting ahead. And I, as an anthropologist with my background in my education, I tend to look at things from a more systemic view. I look at the way that the different structures of society are impacting our behavior, whether we realize it or not, and how, like I mentioned before, all of these social systems, the economy, our education system, our medical system, are interrelated and impact us in so many ways. And so I think what I would hope I would be able to do in considering legislation is really look at the long-term ramifications of decisions that are being made, instead of just, I see this all happening all the time, these reactive short-term fixes, like slapping a Band-Aid on a problem, rather than looking at the systemic change that needs to happen. Yeah. And, obviously as a mom, my priorities are going to be public education, making sure our communities are safe and healthy. Yeah. Sorry, just looking at my notes, making sure I didn't miss anything. Oh, yes, of course. Paid family sick leave, family leave and sick leave. We need that. That needs to be something that is mandated. The government can do that. Other states have done that, and they haven't, city companies haven't gone bankrupt because of that. A living wage, we all need that. And looking at ways that, one of the benefits of COVID is that for some families, we have found a way to make life more, like work-life balance, more flexible by working from home and not having to commute into the office. Even doing things like this, we wouldn't perhaps necessarily have been able to do this before COVID, the three of us talking like this. So I think, we all bring perspectives that think outside the box as well, have ways to work around problems, find ways to work around problems, because we've had to do that in our regular lives. So So yeah. And I was wondering, Dominique, what has surprised you in a good or bad way about running for office? What have you enjoyed, or what have you not enjoyed, or what? I don't know. What are your overall thoughts?
I think what has surprised me is how much people are ready for change. Going into this, I was concerned that age was going to be a problem, that name recognition was going to be a problem. But in talking to voters, it has come across that people are ready for change. They're ready for something new. They're okay with young people representing them, which is really heartwarming for me, because that was completely the thing that I was worried about the most, right? So like, not worried about if I'm educated or, if I have the ability to persuade them to vote. It was here in Memphis, if they can't see you, they don't trust you. And so now that they've saw me and I'm young, what is their reaction to that? Just the affirmation from so many people who are movers and shakers in Memphis and in Shelby County, saying this is the thing that you should do. I'm grateful that you're doing this. It is great to see young people engaged and stepping up. That by far has been the thing that has shocked me the most. Is the outpouring support that I've received from making the decision to do something for people in our community.
That's great. What about you, Amber?
Yeah, I agree with that. Really, like, just to see how many people actually come out and like support you, like I when I announced my running at the Women's March earlier this year, it was huge. Like, I was surrounded by so many people that were like so excited that I was even running. And I was like, well, I'm just like this ordinary person, like I'm not really anything all that great, but I have ideas and I have passion, and I'm pretty dedicated to my work whenever I start it. So, but and I guess like really too is honestly how much people spend, like how much money it costs to run a campaign. And that has just blown me away. I was told, like, as a state Senate race, I would need to raise like $90,000. And I'm like, what? I can't even fathom $90,000 like that. I can't even think of it. Like, so I run like very grassroots campaign. Like, I call it my poor people's campaign because I'm probably will never get nowhere near $90,000, but I spend my money wisely on things that do help my campaign, and that's good. I think that's what's important in running too, is definitely making sure you spend your money wisely.
Yeah, I'm with you there. That's been one of my biggest challenges, and like both of you, I am encouraged by signs that people really do want change in the government. They see that things don't have to be the way they've been. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised about how hard it is. I knew it was going to be a challenge. Don't get me wrong. I knew that, especially because I'm the primary caretaker of my 3 kids. But I didn't realize, like you, Amber, I didn't realize how much money I really needed to raise. And it really is kind of disappointing. It makes me feel kind of sad about our political process, that it costs that much money for people to run for office, because that means that so many people can't run for office, right? I was told I needed to raise $150,000, and I'm just like, that's like twice our annual income, more than that. So I was like, wow. So yeah, it means young people, minorities, women aren't usually running for office, and that's why most of the politicians at all levels that we see are usually old white men, right? So I think that there's going to be some generational change, hopefully, especially within at a greater level across the country. But I think, as more people step up to run for office, and like you said, find creative ways to use our money. We don't have to do things the traditional way anymore. We can find ways to stretch those dollars, just like moms do with all of our our household budgets. We find ways to stretch those dollars. But yeah, it's been a challenge, but it's also been rewarding. I'm learning so much, and I've especially through Emerge, been tapped into this amazing network of people across the state who really are fighting to make things more equitable for everyone. So it's encouraging. Let's see. So Dominique, has your campaign had to pivot, or have you changed your platform or priorities? Oh, hi, kitty. At all since COVID-19, or with the racial protests that are happening?
Not really. The things that are important to District 84 have remained the same. Unfortunately, here in Memphis, the things that are now being highlighted across the nation have always been happening here. It's happened in communities in District 84. So while I don't identify as a protester, I am a community servant. And so my role is in this movement, right, in this moment, is to not only advocate for District 84, but to really be able to advocate for my community at large. And part of that community is the people who are protesting. It is the people who are advocating for change. It is the people who are demanding that our systems be disrupted. And the way that I can best way do that is to get elected and help make sure those policies happen. Mm-hmm. And so while healthcare is a priority, education is a priority, our safety is a priority, all those things are policies that have the ability to give the people of District 84 and residents of Memphis and residents of Shelby County and residents of Tennessee exactly what they're asking for.
What about you, Amber? Have you had to, I don't know, or have you seen a need to shift your priorities or shift the way your campaign is running or managing, reaching out to people?
Yeah. So like COVID took all of us by surprise. I am immunocompromised, so like I have to be really careful. And then of course I have a kid that's immunocompromised as well. So we have to be really careful here in the house about doing stuff. And at first I was really scared about canvassing. So really, I pretty much just shut everything down and moved on to social media, getting my name out through social media and going around. I mean, I put yard signs out and stuff like that, of course, and really just focusing on ads and stuff like that until we knew more about COVID and how it works and everything. But now we've got Vote Builder, and so of course, phone banking is a huge deal, especially during this. It's a pretty good tool, useful tool anyway. But we're talking about canvassing, but doing it in a very safe way to make sure that everyone stays safe while doing so and not being around people. But even just leaving flyers indoors and stuff. That way, we're not coming in contact with people. I mean, it's really taken. I started out running this campaign, having all these ideas about canvassing and talking to people and getting out there in my community and being able to meet more people and going door to door. And now, and then it took a huge shift. And at first I was like, just so discouraged and didn't really know what to do except for social media and everything. But now we're building a good team up, and we're getting out there, and we're going to get out there and do some groundwork now. But I don't think that any of my policies have really changed after all of because of all the protesting and everything. I've always been a huge activist, so I have protested before many, many times. I am a protester. I was in Philly. I protested with Black Lives Matter there years ago. And so, like, I've always been a huge advocate and activist for racial justice. And so when I was doing, you know, trying to come up with policies and stuff, I definitely had addressed that was an issue, way before all of this started. And then of course this started and it was like, wow, this just proves my point. Like, these are some issues that we really need to work on, especially, making sure that the people of the community are safe and taken care of. But we have issues in Tennessee that with for-profit prisons that I don't like. We have a prison in my district in Johnson County, and they are a for-profit prison. They have core civic inside of it. And to me, that I personally think that is slavery. I don't think that other people should make money on the backs of people who, who may have gotten in trouble or maybe even arrested for something they didn't do. I've been told that they only make 33 cents an hour in there.
Yeah.
And that's sick. Like, that's not even, I don't know if you've known anybody who's been in the jail or prison system, but like, you can't even buy Pop-Tarts for that. I mean, your commissary there is insane. And, people trade within, or they make their own businesses within the jails or prisons because like they don't like trading Pop-Tarts and ramen noodles and stuff like that because they don't. What is 33 cents an hour? I mean, just because someone has been charged with something, that doesn't mean that they should be paid nothing for their labor. So I do have an issue with that and stuff, but among other things as well, like the bail system, cash bail. I don't like it either. But I mean, so I'm rambling now.
It's okay. Well, I have to admit, I've always considered myself more of an ally and I realize I need to be more of an advocate. I have always recognized the structural systems that lead to social and racial inequities. That's partly what I studied in school for so long. But I realized, like many white people, we realize that we need to be more anti-racist. We need to be doing more to speak out. Unfortunately, COVID and the racial protests have really been divisive issues in our county. And that's unfortunate because it's a matter of, to my mind, COVID is a matter of everyone coming together for the collective good of keeping our communities healthy. And speaking out against racial injustice should just be, something that happened. I don't know why it's hard to fathom the way some people are perceiving these protests. And it's a matter of making our communities more inclusive and more equitable for everyone. So I haven't specifically pivoted my campaign platform. I'm looking at the issues that I originally am running on in a broader sense. How COVID has exposed the health disparities that communities of color experience because of the lack of funding, in lack of expanding Medicaid, lack of access to fresh fruits and vegetables and quality health care and that sort of thing. And being able to just, take a day off when you're sick and go see the doctor because you don't have paid sick time. So I'm thinking more in terms of systemic issues now too, in addition to my main priorities, which were public education funding, expanding Medicaid, and helping rural communities. And, in terms of campaigning, yeah, I'm with you there. I'm probably not going to be canvassing. I'll be phone banking. And reaching out that way and through postcards and things like that. But yeah, it's tough. There's just so much going on these days. And the news cycle is overwhelming. I think we have to just stay focused on the things that we can advocate for. Have tough conversations when we need to have them with people. Being willing to listen with empathy to other people. And so, yeah, I'm just kind of losing my train of thought, but I think we're heading towards the end of this. We've been chatting for quite a while. It's been a real pleasure. Dominique, can you tell us what your campaign needs most, like how we can help, what we can do to reach out and support you?
Yeah, so I am in a primary election. Election day is August 6th. And so right now we need help making calls. We are actively phone banking every day. And so that is the biggest need. Of course, donating. We're always fundraising because campaigns are expensive. But if you would like to get involved, you can visit our website. It is dominiqueprimer.com. And click on the tab, get involved, and it'll give you options on what you can do to support our campaign.
What about you, Amber?
Yeah, so we're about to start picking up on phone banking once I fully figure out how to work this this program here. But we're about to hit the ground running. Our campaign needs, active volunteers to do phone banking. If you're in this district, we need people that are willing to go and put postcards in doors or on cars or wherever, and keeping yourself safe as well. And everything. We're looking for team members, of course, as well. We have if you go on my website, which is on the screen now, there is a place that you can volunteer. You put in your email address. I can email you some information. And of course, donations always are welcome. Like I said before, I have only taken individual donors. I have no PACs at all. And so we have many donors that just donate $3 a month, and then we have donors that donate $100 a month. But anything helps. So.
Yeah, I echo the same thing that you both are doing. We're phone banking. We're starting to write postcards to voters, so we need volunteers to help us with those initiatives, and donations always help. So we're hoping to get some yard signs going soon. Gosh, those things are expensive. I had no idea, but yeah. So we'll be very happy to receive some donations to help fund our yard signs, and my website's on the screen there too. So, well, I want to thank everyone out there for joining us, and I hope you learned some interesting facts about our districts, and I hope you're all inspired by my fellow Emerge sisters, how we're going to change the world. So we'll say bye, everyone.
I'm so glad to see you guys again and be able to do this with you all.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.